Stop scrolling for 1 second. I need you to actually picture this. An anatomically modern human, 50,000 years old, not a movie caveman, not some hunched grunting extra from a bad documentary. A real person, same brain you're using right now, same heart, same hunger, same capacity to make a genuinely terrible decision at 11 at night. Now I'm putting him in a place he was never built for. A Walmart supercenter, middle of America, fluorescent lights, 200,000 square feet of food he did not have to fight, chase, or dig out of the ground with a stick. He walks in through the automatic doors and freezes, because nothing in 50,000 years of survival prepared him for what he's looking at. Aisle after aisle, soda in 40 flavors, a wall of cereal with cartoon characters screaming at him in colors that don't exist in nature. A bakery pumping the smell of fresh bread and sugar directly into the air on purpose because someone in a lab figured out that smell alone increases purchases by 300%. He doesn't know what any of it is, but his body knows exactly what to do with it. He picks up a bag of something called flamin' hot chips and turns it over in his hands like it's a strange artifact. He doesn't know what monosodium glutamate is. He doesn't need to. His brain reads the salt, the fat, the intensity, and fires off a single ancient signal it has fired for 300,000 years. This is valuable. Take as much as you can carry. He passes a cooler stacked with sports drinks in colors that don't exist anywhere in the natural world. He passes a display of candy at checkout height, positioned there deliberately because someone ran the numbers and found that eye-level sugar at the register increases impulse purchases. He has walked less than 400 feet into this building, and he has already encountered more concentrated, engineered calories than his entire hunting band might have found in a month. Here's the question that should actually bother you. Could that man, genetically identical to you, optimized by hundreds of thousands of years of brutal natural selection, walk out of that Walmart and, over time, become obese? And here's the question underneath that one, the one nobody wants to answer honestly. If he could, what does that say about you? Because you've probably been told your whole life that ancient humans were lean because they moved, they hunted, they walked everywhere, they were basically prehistoric athletes, and somewhere along the way, we became their lazy, couch-bound descendants who lost the plot. What if that's not just wrong? What if it's backwards? What if the exact biology that kept your ancestors alive is the same biology quietly working against you every single time you walk past a Cinnabon in an airport? Let's actually find out. First, let's be clear about who we're talking about. Not Neanderthals. Not some grunting figure from 2 million years ago. We're talking about Homo sapiens. People who lived roughly 300,000 years ago up until the invention of farming. About 10,000 years ago. Clean them up, put them in a hoodie, and they'd order a coffee and complain about traffic like everyone else in this country. Their entire existence revolved around one non-negotiable priority. Find food, eat it, don't die, repeat. No menus, no Tuesday taco night, no fridge. Some weeks it was game meat, some weeks it was roots and tubers. Some weeks, and this will matter later, it was almost nothing at all. Days without food. Sometimes weeks. No DoorDash, no 24-hour gas station, no backup plan. So naturally, you'd assume, of course they were lean. They were starving half the time and sprinting after dinner the other half. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. Scientists actually went and tested this, not guessed. Tested on real living hunter-gatherers who still survive almost exactly like our ancestors did. The Hadza people of Tanzania. No cars, no desk jobs, no chairs. Men track animals across open savanna for hours. Women dig tubers out of rock-hard earth and carry loads for miles under the African sun. This is not a gym membership. This is real, brutal, daily physical output that would put the average American in a hospital bed by day 3. So researchers strapped precision activity monitors on Hadza adults, expecting to prove the obvious. These people torch way more calories than the average sedentary American. The results came back and the entire room of scientists went quiet. The Hadza, hunting, walking, digging, hauling water all day, burned almost the exact same total daily calories as an average adult sitting at a desk in Ohio. Read that again. Same calories, completely different lifestyle. How is that even biologically possible? This is called metabolic adaptation, and it's going to change how you think about your own body forever. Your metabolism isn't a machine that burns more fuel the harder you push it. Think of it more like an obsessively cautious accountant guarding a fixed budget. Spend more energy hunting and walking? The accountant quietly cuts spending somewhere else. Resting metabolic rate drops, certain immune functions dial back, hormone activity shifts, until the total comes out almost exactly the same as someone who never left their couch. Your body isn't trying to make you fit, it's trying to keep you alive under conditions of extreme uncertainty. Those are very different goals, which means physical activity was never the real reason ancient humans stayed lean. So what was? Scarcity. Plain, brutal scarcity. The world simply refused to hand them a caloric surplus large enough, often enough, to build significant fat stores. But here's the twist that should genuinely unsettle you. Their bodies weren't neutral about fat. Their bodies were desperate for it. In 1962, geneticist James Neal proposed something now called the thrifty gene hypothesis. The theory is simple and terrifying. Natural selection specifically favored humans whose bodies were ruthlessly efficient at storing fat the moment food became available, because those were the ones who survived the next famine. Everyone whose body was casual about fat storage simply didn't make it through winter. That means every single person watching this right now is descended from the most efficient fat-storing humans who ever lived. You didn't inherit weakness. You inherited a 5-star evolutionary-grade fat storage system built and perfected over hundreds of thousands of years of near starvation. Your ancestors weren't lean because their bodies didn't want fat. Their bodies were begging for it. The world just wouldn't cooperate. Now take that exact biology, the same genes sitting inside you right now, and drop it into modern America, into a world with a gas station on every corner, a drive-through within 5 minutes of anywhere, and 3,000 calories available at 2 a.m. for the cost of a 5-minute drive. What do you think happens? You already know. You're living it. There's a real-world experiment that already proved this, and the results should terrify you. The Pima people of Arizona lived for centuries as desert farmers. Lean, active, zero history of obesity. Their bodies were perfectly calibrated to a world of hard-won calories. Then in the late 1800s, settlers upstream diverted the rivers the Pima depended on. Their farming system collapsed. The U.S. government stepped in with food assistance, mostly refined flour, lard, canned goods, and sugar. Within one generation, an evolutionary blink, the Pima developed some of the highest rates of obesity and type 2 diabetes ever recorded in any human population on Earth. Their DNA hadn't changed even slightly. Their food had changed completely. And here's the part that removes any doubt. Pima relatives living across the border in the mountains of Mexico, same bloodline, same ancient genetics, kept their traditional diet and stayed lean and metabolically healthy. Same genetic hardware, different food environment. Two completely different outcomes. This wasn't a willpower problem. It was never a willpower problem. It's a software running on the wrong operating environment. Now, before we go further, I need to kill an objection that's probably forming in your head right now. Okay, sure, but the Hadza still look lean and ripped. Doesn't that prove movement matters? Yes. And no. Stay with me because this is where most people get the whole thing backwards. The Hadza are leaner and more muscular than the average American, even while burning the same total calories. Older Hadza adults regularly outperform much younger Americans on cardiovascular fitness tests. That part is completely real. Movement genuinely does something. It's not fake. But here's the trap. If you gave the Hadza full access to a modern American diet, soda, chips, fast food, while letting them keep every mile of walking, every hour of hunting, every bit of their punishing daily activity, the science strongly suggests they'd still gain weight. Rapidly. Because the leanness was never primarily about the calories they burned, it was about the calories they had access to. Unprocessed, naturally filling, impossible to overeat by the truckload. Movement is real. Movement matters for your heart, your hormones, your mood, your long-term health. But movement was never the invisible shield protecting ancient humans from obesity. It was the food. It was always the food. That distinction is the difference between someone who actually understands this topic and someone who's just going to tell you to go on more walks. There's one more piece of the puzzle, and it's the part almost nobody talks about, because it complicates the tidy story. Not every ancient environment was equally brutal. Some, occasionally, handed out real abundance, and it changes the whole equation. Picture the Pacific Northwest, rivers so thick with salmon during the annual run that early populations could practically reach in and grab dinner with their hands. Fish loaded with fat and protein, arriving by the thousands for a few explosive weeks every single year. A population camped by one of those rivers during a run could eat an enormous caloric surplus day after day for weeks straight. So here's the honest, uncomfortable question. Could that kind of extreme, seasonal abundance have pushed some ancient humans toward carrying real extra body fat, biologically? Possibly, under very specific conditions, but almost certainly not to what we'd call clinical obesity today. And the reason why is the most important detail in this entire video. Even in true abundance, wild salmon triggers your satiety hormones hard. Your brain gets the signal, loud and clear, you are full, stop eating. The same goes for game meat, for fiber-rich tubers, for basically anything nature ever produced. Every one of those foods comes with a built-in off switch. A bag of Doritos has no off switch. It was never given one. It was taken away, deliberately, in a lab, decades ago. That's the difference between abundance in nature and abundance at a 7-Eleven. One of them still lets your body say, enough. The other was built to make sure it never does. Here's where it gets personal, because I want you to think about the last time you opened a bag of chips. You told yourself you'd eat a few. You didn't. That wasn't weakness. That was engineering. Food scientists have a term for it, the bliss point. The exact calculated ratio of salt, fat, and sugar that maximizes pleasure while deliberately preventing your brain from ever registering, I'm full. Every bite is chemically designed to feel exactly as good as the first one. Nature never built anything like this. A wild salmon is loaded with fat, and your body still shuts off hunger after a certain amount, because salmon triggers real satiety signals. You physically cannot overeat salmon the way you can overeat Doritos, because nature had zero incentive to stop you from feeling full. An entire American food industry, on the other hand, has a massive incentive to make sure you never quite feel finished. Your ancient, thrifty, fat-hoarding brain was never designed to defend itself against something engineered specifically to defeat it. Think about how absurd this actually is when you say it out loud. There are food scientists right now in test kitchens running consumer panels, adjusting the crunch, the salt-to-fat ratio, the exact melt point of a product in your mouth, all with one single, explicit goal: not to nourish you, not even really to satisfy you, to make sure you come back for more before you've even finished what's in front of you. Your ancestor never once had to defend himself against an opponent that was actively, professionally trying to outsmart his own biology. His food didn't want anything from him. Your food does. And it's not just the food. Look at the rest of the environment stacked against that same ancient biology. Chronic stress that keeps cortisol and your appetite elevated around the clock. Artificial light wrecking the sleep and hormone cycles your body relies on to regulate hunger. Sedentary jobs that remove the movement your metabolism was calibrated around, while doing almost nothing to change your total calorie burn anyway. Every piece of the modern American environment is quietly working against the exact biology that kept your ancestors alive. Now here's the part that should genuinely stop you. Archaeologists have examined the skeletal remains of pre-agricultural humans across the world. What they find is almost eerie in its consistency: strong bone density, joints worn from varied functional movement, not the repetitive strain of a desk chair or a treadmill. Minimal tooth decay because there was no refined sugar to feed cavity-causing bacteria. No skeletal evidence, none, of the chronic disease patterns tied to obesity today. These were not unhealthy people. Compare that to a typical American skeleton examined by forensic anthropologists today. Joint degeneration from decades of sitting, bone density issues linked to inactivity, dental records full of fillings, root canals, decay, a direct fingerprint of a sugar-saturated diet no Paleolithic population ever came close to experiencing. Same species, same starting hardware. 10,000 years of a completely different diet, and the skeleton itself tells two entirely different stories. Then agriculture arrives, roughly 10,000 years ago, and the skeletal record shifts almost overnight. Average height drops, bone density falls, cavities appear in large numbers for the first time in human history. Signs of nutritional deficiency spike. Agriculture gave humanity surplus, stored grain, cities, eventually civilization itself, but it also did something no human body had ever experienced before. It made prolonged caloric surplus possible for the first time in the history of our species. The supermarket wasn't invented in the 20th century. It was invented the day someone built the first grain silo. We just didn't feel the full consequences for another 10,000 years. Think about what that actually means on a timeline. 300,000 years of your species surviving scarcity, 10,000 years of agriculture slowly loosening the leash, and roughly 70 years, one human lifetime, since food became genuinely engineered, mass-produced, and available at any hour, anywhere, for almost nothing. Your body has had 70 years to adapt to a threat it spent 300,000 years never once encountering. That is not a fair fight. That was never going to be a fair fight. We're feeling the consequences of that mismatch right now, in real time, in this country, on a scale no ancient population ever faced. So let's actually answer the question. Could an ancient human, dropped into their own world, ever become clinically obese? Almost never. Not because their bodies were different from yours, not because they had more willpower, more discipline, some mythical ancestral virtue we've since lost. Their bodies wanted exactly what your body wants. The environment simply refused to hand them enough calories, often enough, for long enough, to make it happen. Now take that same ancient man from the beginning of this video, same brain, same hunger, same thrifty, 1,000-generation tested biology, and drop him permanently into modern America. Sedentary work, ultra-processed food engineered to defeat his satiety signals, stress hormones running around the clock, every gas station on every corner whispering the same ancient message his DNA has been listening to for 300,000 years. Eat now, store everything, winter always comes. He wouldn't just become obese. He'd have zero defense against it, no cultural experience of abundance, no concept of a serving size. His brain, staring down a drive-through menu for the first time in his life, would register it as the single greatest caloric windfall in the entire history of his species, and it would scream at him to take every bit of it. Here's what all of this actually means, and I need you to sit with it for a second. You are that ancient human, not metaphorically, literally. Same genes, same metabolic wiring, same reward circuitry. In evolutionary terms, the gap between you and a hunter-gatherer walking the plains 50,000 years ago is a single blink. So the next time you can't stop after 3 chips, that's not a character flaw, that's a nervous system doing exactly what kept your ancestors alive for 300,000 years, encountering a food built specifically to exploit it. The next time a candy bar doesn't satisfy you the way a piece of fruit somehow does, that's not you being weak, that's your satiety hormones failing to recognize a threat that nature never prepared them for. The next time you're standing in your kitchen at midnight, not even hungry, just eating, that's not a personal failure you need to journal about. That's 300,000 years of abundance never lasts, take it while you can, firing exactly as designed, at exactly the wrong moment, in exactly the wrong world. None of this means you're powerless. Understanding the system doesn't excuse you from it. It just finally explains why the fight has felt so unfair. You're not weak-willed. You're not broken. You're not lazy. You are running ancient, brutally effective survival software in a country that has, quite literally, weaponized abundance against it. He didn't get obese because he was lazy. He got obese because we built a world his body was never designed to survive, and then handed him the keys to a Walmart. We didn't give ancient humans a better life. We gave them our life. And here's the last thing I want you to sit with. Every single person you know who's struggled with weight, who's blamed themselves at 2 a.m. after a binge, who's felt like their body was somehow broken or defective, none of them lost a fight against themselves. They lost a fight against 300,000 years of evolution colliding, at full speed, with 70 years of engineered abundance nobody's biology was ever built to survive. That ancient man in the Walmart wasn't weak. You're not weak. You're just very, very good at surviving a world that no longer exists, trapped inside a world that was built, quite deliberately, to exploit exactly that. And now we're all just watching what happens next.